Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Hello, PR Maven Nation. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, and I'm so excited about my guests for episode 141. My guest today is Christine Tieri, who's a Gallup certified strengths coach at Chris Tieri Corporation. Chris, welcome to the PR Maven Podcast.
Hey, Nancy. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited for today.
I'm excited too, because you and I have been part of the Agency Management Institute for a long time, and we've had a lot of fun at the various meetings and in locations all across the country.
Yes, and I will say you brought me into that. You were the one who reeled me in, so I thank you for that.
I'm glad I reeled you in. That was a good catch. So, Christine Tieri is a business and leadership brand strategist, national speaker, and Gallup certified strengths coach. Focusing on her strength of vision, ideation, and strategy, Chris works with her clients to discover their unique strengths, make a meaningful impact on those they lead, and set up strategies to accomplish their wildest goals for success. A former ad agency owner for nearly 25 years, Chris knows a thing or two about brand building, strategic messaging, and 3 martini lunches. My favorite thing. Actually, yeah, I did do those back in the 80s, when it was still fashionable. I have no idea how I made it through the day.
I thought it was still fashionable, though, Nancy.
Well, it will be on the day that we get together, whenever that is, hopefully soon.
Yeah, soon.
So, Chris, tell us about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
Well, I got into it because I started off wanting to be an interior designer, actually, and started taking interior design classes in college. And one of the first projects we got was designing a restaurant. But it was from start. It wasn't just the interior flow and where the booths went or anything like that, but it was like what the name of the restaurant was, what the graphics were. And I found myself spending all my time doing on the marketing piece of it. Like, what is, in the brand, what's the name of it? How will it look? What's the color scheme? What will the ads look like? And I realized that really advertising was my passion. So I switched my major, and I was an advertising design major at Syracuse University, and went through school there. And they have a building down in New York City called Lubin House. And they used to send all the creatives portfolios down there. And so my portfolio went down, and I got picked up by a creative director, and I started my career in New York City. And I was an art director down there for about 5 or 6 years. Fabulous, fun time. Like, they just, throw you in and you have to sink or swim, and you just swam and swam. So I really enjoyed my time in New York. By the time I was, 23, 24, I had done dozens of TV commercials, because nobody really asked how old you were, how much experience you had. If you just did it, you just did it. So I'm like, okay, here goes nothing. So, so I was really on kind of a fast track down there, and it was exhausting, frankly, fun and exhausting at the same time. So about the time I was 27, I moved back to New England. I'm from Central Mass, and I hung up my own shingle and started my own ad agency, and partnered up with a great friend of mine for many years of that agency. And And when she sort of retired from agency world, she was a little smarter than I was, got out a little sooner. But just all joking aside, I continued, and then I ended up selling about 10 years after she had left. So so now I'm a former agency owner.
Yeah, which I always say that's what all of us agency owners want to be.
You're striving to be a former agency
Just kidding.
owner.
But today does have to be the 30th anniversary of my agency.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Congratulations. See, I wish that champagne came a little earlier. We could sell that is worth celebrating. Sure.
Yeah, I should tell everybody in full transparency. Chris ordered me a bottle of champagne through Drizzly that is going to be delivered right after this is over. So. It's the first time I've gotten a Drizzly delivery. So how and why did you make the transition from agency owner to coach?
So I always, one piece of my business that I always loved, but I didn't even put a label on it, but it was just when I thought back about the things I liked most about owning an agency, was actually bringing along my employees and helping them develop their natural strengths, and even clients. You know, I would have like CEOs, or especially the entrepreneurial CEOs with the smaller businesses, who sort of needed coaching along in their business. And again, not without labeling myself a coach or even knowing kind of what I was doing at the time. That's really what it was. And so one thing I had used in my agency that I loved was this Gallup Strengths Finder assessment, and they now call it Clifton Strengths. And there's 34 strengths, and the premise is that why spend all that time and energy fixing your flaws when if you spent that same amount of time and energy enhancing your natural, talents, sky's the limit, really. So, and not that you should ignore weaknesses, but you don't need to focus on them as much. Focus on what makes you you and what makes you great. And I really believed in that. And my employees got into it. We used to hang our signature strengths on our doors, and people would really get to understand each other a little bit more. So I just love that piece. And when the opportunity came to sell my agency, I tried to think of all the things I loved doing that I didn't want to give up. And that was one of them. So I actually went to become a Gallup certified strengths coach and went to class in Chicago and took the test and all of that stuff. And so now that's where I'm at. And I'm using a lot of it. I'm still doing brand consulting, but I use a lot of the strengths finding in everything I do. I also do executive coaching and team coaching and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was just I have on a sticky note here somewhere on my desk. Oh, here we go. Because you did it for me.
Yeah.
And I am strategic, maximizer, focus, which I'm not always, anyway, futuristic and empathetic. So
wow,
yeah, that was really helpful.
Which is why you are super at what you do, right? Like you maximize a situation for a business. You're going to leverage PR, you're going to leverage marketing, you're going to put it together. But the thing I love about you is the empathetic, which is what makes you such a great interviewer. I have to confess that out of the 34 strengths, you can see what your top 5 are, but I got my whole 34, and empathy is number 34. I should say. But I'm a little embarrassed on that one, but we do share strategic and futuristic, and I'm not surprised by all of it. Yeah, you are definitely, so.
Yeah, I definitely would say I'm a maximizer.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm an achiever too, I sometimes say my strengths, like if you put together achiever, communication, futuristic, strategic, like I sometimes come in like the Tasmanian devil. Like I'm like, and it's a little too much for people. So you also have to know when to back off of your strengths when they're all in full force. Sometimes, like you might experience as well, because, we're similar. You can scare the crap out of people. So you have to know when to pull out which strengths and use them.
In one of my first jobs, the woman who was like the senior admin person said, "You are a human bulldozer."
Thanks, I think.
Really? No, I don't think she meant it as a compliment. So yeah, that's exactly what you're talking about. Sometimes you have to learn how to tone it down a little bit. And the other thing is sometimes you have to learn how to make small talk with people first. Like I do that now. Back then I didn't have time for small talk though. I would like launch right into like get it done. I'd have my teeth gritted like this.
That's because you were trying to maximize.
Yeah,
no,
right.
No waste here, just maximizing.
Like, yeah, in the future, I want this job done. So tell us about your passion project. I can't wait to hear about this.
So I don't even know kind of how it started, but, and I don't actually even know what it's going to be, right? So it's this concept that's out there, and I want to I'm a storyteller, as you know, and I love people telling stories, and I love humor. And so I was trying to think of putting it all together. What does that mean? And I came up with this concept: laughter, leadership, motherhood, wine. And I thought I would love to get to know more ladies who love to laugh, who are in leadership positions, juggling motherhood, and who like a good glass of wine at the end of the day or at the weekend or whenever, sometimes noon, sometimes noon, you never know. So I have this idea, and I don't know if it's a book, a podcast, just a collection of stories. I don't know if it goes anywhere, if it's just my own personal passion project, and it just sits on my desk. But I would love to chat with other women, because I think there's synergies, right? Like sometimes we feel like we're alone. You've got the kids, and our kids are grown. But I mean, you remember what it was like, trying to juggle sports schedules and, SATs and like, school and college applications, and also then trying to juggle your employees who sometimes act like toddlers anyways. And like, there's a whole synergy. And if Emma's listening, I don't mean you, Emma. Emma's Nancy producer. Definitely don't mean her.
Yeah, no, of course not.
But there's a juggle that happens, and if you don't have humor, how do you get through? So I feel like I kind of went through it without as much humor as I would have liked. So that's what I kind of want to maybe bring to it to help others who are going through that right now. So that's kind of my passion project. So, if you or any of your, listeners want to sign up to give me a story about laughter, leadership, motherhood, and wine. And also I'm going to do a spinoff, laughter, leadership, fatherhood, beer. So
that's awesome.
We can talk to them all.
Well, I did participate in a workshop that you put on a weekend. Was it in January?
Yes, it was a goal setting workshop.
Yeah, that was really awesome. It was really
thank you.
Refreshing and revitalizing. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
At the beginning of the year, everybody's always setting goals, and I thought it was called Girlfriend's Goal Crusher Workshop. And I thought it would be fun just to get people, girls and their girlfriends together. We had some guys on the line as well, and just mapping out your goals for the upcoming year. I think it was fun to do together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I need to do it again.
I know that. Well, a lot of the feedback I got was, can you do a follow-up? Can we have a monthly meeting? Like, we need to be more accountable. So, maybe next year I'll put together a little bit more of a longer program for that.
Yeah, that would be great. I would enjoy that. So what is StrengthsFinder, and how do you use it with your clients?
Sure. So again, I shared how I used it with my own agency, but with my clients, what I'm finding is it's really coming in handy for people who are transitioning either from like one job to another, like a different industry, or just somebody who's maybe being promoted to a different level. And what's really great about it is people get nervous at transition, and they wonder if they can do it, or if, they're going to be good at it. And when I help them identify their strengths and see really, it's almost like a validation, because nobody gets their strengths back and is like, oh, I'm surprised I'm futuristic. They're like, no, that makes sense, right? Usually, I mean, I haven't gotten that yet. But so once they kind of own it and they start owning their strengths, they really have a much better time feeling good about whatever's next for them. So, a couple of clients stand out for me. One was being elevated. She was into a director position. She was a part of a team, and she was chosen to be their leader. So she'd been friends with them for years and all the same sort of peer level. And now she was going to be their leader, which is a hard transition to make because everybody kind of views you as like one of them, so so we worked together to, help her sort of lean into her strengths so she could be, a little more authoritative, but still friendly, and but take charge and know that she was a decision maker. And I think she really went a long way with her confidence in that area. And I had another gal who was transitioning completely from one career, complete turn, something completely unrelated. And we worked through it with her strengths, and she realized that, yeah, I can do this. My strengths are going to help me with my new career path. And so she was less afraid to kind of make the jump. So I love, that's a great place for me, is the transition place. So and now I'm working with some teams too, to help teams identify how they can work together better. This one might have this strength, this one might have another, and how can they all work together to accomplish their team's goals.
I think that's great. I think if people are sometimes just kind of given permission to own who they are. I know that back when I started my business, my own father didn't think you should have your own business because he thought you could never like get away from it. And he thought that it was much better to work for a big company, where the company has all the stress and you just work for them. And, but the guy I was working for at Sugarloaf was like, no, Nancy, you are an entrepreneur. You're cut out for an entrepreneurial life, and you should like just own that. And I'm so glad he did. He kind of like gave me permission to
That's right.
go out on my own.
That's awesome. And that's exactly right. And they have this phrase in StrengthsFinder. It's called name it, claim it, and aim it. So, and that's sort of the process you go through. So the first part is naming what your strengths are, which is once you take the assessment, they do label it, but they don't want you to be sort of confined to labels, but just really sort of understanding what your strengths are. And then claiming it is really kind of owning it. And that piece that you said, like, just, okay, this is who I am. I'm going to own it, and I'm going to be the best possible with it. And then the aiming it is like, now that you know who you are and what your strengths are, what am I going to do with them? Right. So I love that progression of the name it, claim it, aim it. And, or they say, love it, live it, something else too, which I also love, but, but you get the idea of, once you understand what it is, how are you going to use your strengths and how are you going to really lean into them?
Right. I also like the philosophy of focusing on your strengths because, for example, I'm not very good at accounting, but so one philosophy would have had me like spend all my time learning accounting, but I hired an accountant and I told him I really need you.
Yes.
My strength.
Yeah.
But he
know what you're good at.
My accountant would not at all be good at what I do either.
No.
So it's like we complement each other.
That's right. Absolutely.
So Chris, what lessons have we learned about effective leadership from COVID?
Oh boy. Well, here's something interesting. I work very closely. I consult with the Old Sturbridge Village, and I was just working with the CEO recently. And we, at the village, there's over 200 employees. And for a nonprofit destination focused organization, we were able to keep most of our employees throughout COVID. It was really miraculous. And it was at the leadership of Jim Donahue, who really put that front and center. And we were talking about COVID and how different people were affected and how the managers really had to be open to all different sort of reactions. So usually we're open to all different styles of workers and things like, differences in our employees. But COVID brought out so many different things in people. Some people were like, okay, I'm going to just, put my nose to the grindstone and get through it. And other people were freaked out, and other, people had worries beyond work, like their families and illness and whatnot. So you just didn't know. And he thought that empathy, making sure we were all empathetic during this time was super important. And of course, with my empathy at number 34, I really had to concentrate on my, department there. But it was really a great way. And, I think empathy is really the way through for leaders during this time, and not maybe trying to get the most productivity. Cause then, like being a maximizer, or with me, like an achiever, what are we doing? How are we getting it done? Why are we wasting time? And that couldn't happened during COVID. You needed to give people space, and you needed to give people the sort of a responsibility to get the things done in their time, in their way during this time. So I think the most successful leaders were ones who could tap into empathy.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so thrilled the way my team at Marshall Communications was able to adapt to working from home. And we ended up closing our office. Like yesterday, we completely moved out of our big office, and we now have just like a tiny little one-person office space, but we've decided just to be permanently work from home. So
you really trusted that your team you could get everything accomplished you need to remotely as much as you could obviously, or you wouldn't have let your office go. So that's great that you were open to that.
We have a lot of methods of accountability. One is like a lot of, weekly meetings, and Charlene touches base with each person individually each week. And, we all do our time slips every day. So
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
One real thing I don't miss at all about agency.
Yeah. Right. Oh boy. It's not my favorite thing either at all. Well, we're going to hear more from Chris in just a moment, but now I just want to remind you that my latest book, Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand, is available.
Highly recommended.
If you go to prmaven.com/giveaway, you can actually download the whole thing on Kindle. So that is your bonus for tuning in today. We're going to hear now about my message mapping course, and then we're going to be back in just a moment with more from Chris Tieri.
Do you want to grow your client or customer base? Perhaps increase brand awareness? Maybe tell your unique story more effectively? Of course you do. But you may be worried that you don't have enough expertise to make that happen. Well, no worries, PR Maven Nation. Let the PR Maven herself, Nancy Marshall, show you how easy it is to get your message across effectively using a powerful yet simple tool, a message map. Nancy's training is often called informative and constructive, well-designed and impactful, with a perfect blend of theory and real-life experience. You will leverage Nancy's expertise to create your own message map when you register for this comprehensive online video training course, which is broken down into 4 easy-to-understand modules. Normally, this course is priced at $147, but for listeners of the PR Maven podcast, that's you, PR Maven Nation, it's only $29 when you enter the code word podcast during enrollment. It even includes a workbook and bonus content to guide you through the process. So go to prmaven.com and click on the Message Map Mastery course to enroll today. Remember, enter the word podcast during enrollment for a special discounted price of $29.
Welcome back to the PR Maven podcast. And today we're talking with Christine Tieri. And I want to mention that the podcast is also available on Facebook and YouTube. And this is a new thing. We're using StreamYard. And I do have to give Chris some credit here, because she and I did some work over the last summer, on my branding and sort of the branding of the PR Maven and the branding of Marshall Communications, and expanding this into video was one of the things that came out of those conversations. So it's all happening. Like, sometimes when you have new ideas, it's like, oh gosh, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get to that. But if you just implement them, it's like seeing the trees from the forest, okay, one tree at a time.
That's right. And a good support system like Emma, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's critical. That's for sure. So, Chris, you're an expert in personal branding as well as organizational branding. And what is your definition of a brand?
So I like to say that a brand is your unique point of difference, your differentiator, your distinction, what sets you out if you're a business brand in the marketplace, and what sets you out if you're a personal brand from all the other peers in your group or leaders or whatever it is that your thing is. So really just the separator, the big unique thing that makes you you.
Right. And I like to think of it too is like how people feel, not only how they think about you, but how they feel in their heart. Like,
Yes.
if you say a certain brand that I like, like I love the ski resort Sugarloaf where I used to work, and
Hmm.
that just makes my heart happy. But
Yes.
but
Yes.
if I hear something like Walmart, I don't have that same. I mean, sometimes Walmart's nice and everything, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't make my heart sing.
No. And what's interesting, it is a feeling. The brand is really the image that somebody else holds in their eyes. So it is the feeling they get. And I'm going to screw up this Maya Angelou quote, but it's something like, they won't remember what you say. They won't remember your words, but they will remember how they make you feel. Something, I
Yeah,
definitely screwed that
exactly.
up.
Yeah,
But the point being that, yes, how does somebody walk away feeling when they've interacted with you, your brand, your
yeah.
product? Yes.
Yeah, so our job as brand managers is to kind of keep our fingers on the pulse of how people are feeling about our brand and
Hmm.
course
Absolutely.
correct. Yeah,
Yes.
if
Well,
people
that's
aren't
what your
feeling.
book is about, your audience,
Yeah,
growing your audience. You need to know what they want, right? How
yeah,
they feel when they interact with you, because that's how you'll grow your audience. So that's
yeah.
really important. I had done a lot of brand studying over the years, and there was uh, a group I was with who was big about talking about how the brand comes from within, and that is super true. But they didn't put a lot of emphasis on the audience piece, and that was the part that really kind of got me every time. Was, okay, you can do and say and be, but if your audience, the people who you want to influence or be in your circle, are, if they're not resonating with what you're saying, then either you need to change your message or you need to change your audience. But the audience is a huge part of that equation. And you know I'm gonna just because Susan is one of our favorite people,
Oh yeah,
I'm gonna mention audience audit. That's when I really got into how to bring the audience into the brand development, was understanding who they are and what motivates them and making sure there's alignment there. Because if you don't know your audience, or what drives them, then how do you know if your brand is really matching up? Or again, get a different audience if it's if it's not.
well, I always remember the case study when you two worked together on branding a dry cleaner, and
Yes.
you
Yes.
identified all the different categories of customers. Even though it was one dry cleaning service, there was different types of customers, and each one was motivated by a different aspect of
Yeah.
the operation.
Yeah, it was fascinating, and that one was great because everybody understands what dry cleaners do. So it was
Right.
super easy to get that concept. But if just as an example, the four audiences, if I can remember them, were it was kind of like, not that they're all male, but we call them the shirt guys, because they were guys who just wanted their shirts picked up, washed for $2, dry clean, pressed, this starch, that starch, and they didn't even want to talk to anybody. They wanted to hang them on their door. Somebody picks them up, somebody puts them back. Like, that was their. But then there were these other people who wanted to come into the dry cleaner. They'd go to Starbucks, then they'd go to dry cleaner, then they'd go to yoga, and they wanted to have this interaction with their dry cleaner. They needed to know them by name. It was part of their daily routine. And then there was another group who was super picky, and they had 5 dry cleaners, and it was like cashmere sweaters and this and that. But if you lost a button, they would throw you out to dry. So they looked great because they had a high price point, but they were your toughest customer. And then the last group was fans, people who just love the brand, and you could raise your prices, you could do this, you could do that, and they'd still stay with you because they loved you for who you were. So
Yeah.
and one other thing, not to just talk dry cleaning, but one other thing we found out that was across all segments was this dry cleaner was really into being environmentally correct. They had what they called perk-free cleaning, and perk is a type of chemical, so they were free of that. And they spent, before we met them, they were spending all their advertising money talking about being a greener cleaner because they were perk-free, and all of their advertising dollars were talking about this. When we asked the question, do you know what perk-free means? Half of their audience didn't know. Half of their consumers had no idea what it meant. And of the ones who knew what it was free, we asked them to rate where environmentally friendly was on the thing. It was like number 10. It wasn't even in the top 5. It was like, I want my shirts clean. I want this. I don't really give a crap how many chemicals you use on it. Like, so they were spending all this money on something that wasn't motivating the consumer, but it was a huge aha moment for them. So really interesting, looking at your audience against your brand.
Right. And you can learn so much from
Yeah.
your audience. So
Right.
yeah. So yeah, Susan Beyer, audience audit. We'll give her a shout out.
It's her birthday. So it was, today.
Oh, is it?
Yes, or it might have been yesterday.
Oh,
I apologize, Susan.
We'll have to send her a shout out. So many of our listeners are interested in strengthening their personal brand, and how should they go about doing that?
So like an organizational brand, there's a few things you should look at. I call them the brand building blocks, but I think I just sort of made them up. But what I like to call them is you look at your purpose, right? What makes you get up in the morning? It has to be some bigger worldly purpose, and Simon Sinek's Start With Why, famous TED Talk from years ago, is still relevant. And it's an 18-minute TED Talk, definitely worth it listening to if you haven't. And it really talks about that inner motivation for organizations, but also you can apply it to individuals. And it's that really, if you answer what drives you to get up in the morning every day, then you're going to be happy and satisfied within. And then it's finding that brand distinction or that differentiator. And if you do the strengths assessment through Gallup, then to me, those strengths are your differentiator. When you put them all together, that really differentiates you. And to prove that point, so Nancy, if you are 1 out of 200,000 in your top 5 strengths, there's 1 in 200,000 people have your same top 5 strengths, but 1 in 33 million have your 5 strengths in the same order, which is pretty amazing. Like, that is pretty unique. You don't really, people say 1 in a million, 1 in 33 million. So wow. To me, when you really look at that order of your strengths, that is a distinction, because it's only you out of 33 million who have that particular, strength in that order. So I love using that for distinction, but you can also find that out on your own just by knowing, what makes you you. And then proof is another building block. So once you kind of know what makes you you, what are the ways that your brand organizationally or personally are kind of proving it out? There's going to be some sort of, so for instance, Target, right, is the more style. You mentioned Walmart, but Target is a little bit more, it's like Walmart, but it's more stylish, right? So how do they prove that they're more stylish than Walmart? Well, they hire designers to do a lot of their products. They put their stores in a much better, brighter light that's a little bit more fashionable. You don't feel so ew shopping there, right? So
less
ew at Target. So what is the proof? And then so like for you, Nancy, what's your proof for your point of distinction, being the PR maven and all that? Well, if you start looking at all the things you're involved in, the podcast that helps others learn all this, secret tips and tricks to putting yourself out there, those are the things, the proof. You've written 2 books or 3 books, right? On the PR side. Yeah. So those
Forbes columnist.
There you go. So those are all proof points that you are an expert in. That's in you, in PR Maven. So, and then promise. And this is where the audience comes in. What's your promise to your audience? So how are they experiencing you? And are you delivering that day in and day out? And again, that applies for personal brand or business brand. Are you delivering on your brand promise? And then lastly, this one's kind of easy, but personality. It's kind of what people see and experience. But if you're sort of a fun, happy-go-lucky person, but you come in like power suits and it's a little bit of a disconnect from really who you are. So I think personality, people have to see what their natural, you might have to tune it up or tune it down for different situations.
Yeah.
But certainly you need to be true to your personality so that when your brand is experienced by somebody, it feels real and authentic.
Yeah. So. And actually, I have to say, it's only for me really within the past maybe 5 years that I feel like I've fully embraced who I am and been able to incorporate that. Because I think previously I was always questioning myself and, oh, maybe I shouldn't be like that. Maybe I should be different. And
You
then
should
I'm
be
kind of
Nancy.
like, yeah, I should be who I am. It's easiest just to be yourself.
Yes, exactly. Right. So,
So I know you have done a lot of research. We've talked about some of the research you did in the past. How does
mhm.
research help with branding?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, I like audience research. There's also different other types of research, like competitive research or, brand perception research. I'm actually doing a project right now with a client who wants to really. They were two companies that merged, and they want to understand how their brand's being perceived
Mhm.
now. So we're doing some brand perception research to understand maybe what people thought the brands were themselves before they merged, and then now what that is now that they've been merged for a couple of years. So that's really interesting too. It's a little harder to get to because you have to ask questions and then decipher, what they mean by them. You can't really just come out and ask somebody, what's your brand perception, because they're gonna, they're not gonna really be able to answer that. But one way I like to do it, I call it the brand lookalike. So for instance, if I'm doing research on a bank, I might say, okay, we're the Marriott of the banking industry, because we have branches everywhere. We accommodate our customers, or I'm the Rolls Royce of the banking industry because we only appeal to luxury wealthy clients and only with big investments. So I love sort of doing that and having people explain why they're the X X brand of a certain industry, and people get into it. At first they're a little bit like, oh, how do I do this? But when you start giving them examples, I'm the Levi's of, the restaurant industry or whatever. So, and it's kind of fun to do. And then clients are always like, oh, I didn't realize I was, the whatever of whatever.
That's great.
Yeah. I didn't realize I was the McDonald's of,
Yeah, right.
or the Walmart of banking. But
yeah, that's cool.
yeah, it's a fun way to get at the answers that you need.
Right. Because big brands like that, we all do have a perception of them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen some people do, pick a color. What's this brand's color, or what's the, some sort of, but that's really subjective because some people like beige and some people hate beige.
Right,
So
yeah.
what does it mean? So that's why I like to do sort of a big well-known brand, even though somebody might bring their own lens to it. It's pretty, you can pretty much get to what they're trying to say.
Right. Yeah. No, that's
Quickly.
cool.
It's like a shortcut. Yeah.
So, Chris, is there a book, an app, or a website that you have found helpful, and why?
So I would say anything Seth Godin. He's like my favorite. And starting from Purple Cow, I think I probably was introduced to him before that, but Purple Cow, the book is really old now, but it's so relevant, and it came out, he reinvented it. But I just love this book. But it's all about everybody everybody expects a brown and white or a black and white cow. You're driving along the road and you see a cow and you see a million cows and they all kind of look the same. But if you saw a purple cow, you would stop immediately to get a better look at that cow. And that's as simple as it gets. To me, that's brand, right? And then he goes through and gives examples of the purple cows in the industry, the Southwest, the apples, and to me, that it just says it all right there. And as you know, purple was my color of my agency and my purple process. And it wasn't because of the purple cow, but I would always give everybody a purple cow book. And to this day, it is extremely relevant. He also wrote Linchpin. I mean, a million things. Linchpin is so for personal brand, Linchpin is a good read. And it's all about picking yourself. Like, don't wait around for somebody to pick you, pick yourself, get out there, do your thing. And you're going to start aligning with people who like you for you and appreciate what you bring. And the last book, well, I mean, again, he has a million books, but Tribes is another one that talks to audience. And it talks about how you have your own tribes. Like you don't need mass marketing anymore. I mean, it's hard to even break through the clutter of mass marketing.
Right.
Everybody has their own tribes and you can find them now on the internet. So, and especially my work with Old Sturbridge Village, I mean, they have a tribe, right? They have types of people who like them. I mean, not everybody's going to like them, but if we can appeal to that tribe, well, then it's perfect, So anything by him, and I would sign up for his daily blog. He is religious about writing a daily blog, and some are short, some are long, but they're always like, wow, yeah, he gets it. Or
Wow.
he is it. And the rest of us get it
too.
Yes.
Well, Chris, this has been really great. I'm so glad that you joined us. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
I'm on LinkedIn at Chris Tieri, one word. And that's a good way because you can private message me there. I'm on Facebook, but I usually mostly use Facebook for fun. So don't hold it against me if you see me having cocktails on the front porch or something like that. It's already out there. I've labeled my passion project with the word wine in it. So
yeah, right. That's the reason I like hanging around with you too.
So Facebook for fun, LinkedIn for business. You probably won't see me too much on Twitter, although I do. I have a handle and I'm on there, but yeah, it goes too fast for me. And, and then you can always reach me on my website too, christieri.com. You can just email me from there. So it would be great to hear from you all.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. And I'm sure everybody in PR Maven Nation enjoyed our conversation.
And a shout out to all our AMI family that we miss so much, Nancy. Well, hopefully,
right.
Even though I'm not even an agency owner anymore, I look forward to getting our tribe back together at some point for a little reunion. So
I do too. So whether you were listening in live or whether you're watching the replay, I want to thank you for joining us. And I hope you have a great day, PR Maven Nation. Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven Podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the skills and games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.